discussing last week this idea of perpetual joy. Perpetual joy meaning it was based on a discussion in the Shulchan Aruch. To what degree do we celebrate Purim? And we basically came up with the point of if you're going to find an excuse, go for it. Because we always want to have a reason to celebrate. We always want to have a reason to feast. We always have a reason to be joyous because really that's the state we all want to be in always. We want to be constantly in a state of joy. And whatever excuse we're going to find, hopefully many and hopefully easy and hopefully they're not considered excuses, but whatever reasons we're going to give to support our joy, we want to go for it because that's the state we want to be in. We want to be in a state of constant joy. In this discussion, there was a verse, Tov Lev Mishtatamid, a verse from Proverbs, someone who has a good heart is always feasting. And we were analyzing this verse last week, trying to make it practical, trying to make it real, because we want to be always feasting. We want to be always in a state of like perpetual happiness and feeling good about our life, because that was actually, we said how Rashi, the most classical commentator, explains this verse. He says, what does it mean he's a good-hearted person? A good-hearted person is a person who is happy with their life. Happy with their life. That's a very, very, very big virtue, because we can't control much. We could try, we make our efforts, but much, much, much in our life is out of our hands. And I'm sure for most of us, much in our life is not at all like we scripted and not at all like we thought, it's not at all like we imagined. Maybe it's far better, but it's probably different. It's probably not what you envisioned 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 30 years ago. What your life would look like. So how do we stay in the state of perpetual happiness? By our own perspective, by our own gratitudes, by our own looking at our life and saying, I have a good life. I have a good life. And as we look at our life and feel content in our life, content even if it's not what we had scripted, what we thought, when we're content in our life, it's a really straight road to being happy. So I was actually thinking about this a lot this week. I was thinking a lot about what I taught because we were explaining this idea of it's really the difference, unpacking and analyzing this concept, we said, between a broad-minded person and a small-minded person. And our sages said that if you're a broad-minded person, you don't have so many needs. You don't feel you lack anything. You feel all your needs are met. You're happy with your life. And if you're a small-minded person, you feel you have a lot of needs and you don't feel so happy with your life and you feel you want, need, must have more and more and more. So why? We were trying to understand what's this idea of small-minded and why as its expression in our prayers, it's a quote from our prayers, many are the needs of your people and their minds are very small. When their minds are small, their needs are great. When their minds are broad, their needs are small. So what's the small-minded, great needs, broad-minded, small needs? So this idea, which we discussed last week, and I have to say, I can't say I always spend a week mulling over what we discussed, but this I actually did. Many, many, many times I rethought this concept because, I don't know, it's just so relevant to our life. So the first way we explained this, and we only explained it one way last week, we'll explain it another way today, is that God gives us what we need. But when we run after what we don't need, we don't only not get what we're running after, but we lose what we should be getting. And we gave this metaphor, this parable of a dress, a nice dress. And if the dress is too long, it's not nice. Actually, if the dress is too long, you fall flat on your face. So just because something is good, more isn't better. And we said, okay, so that's the small mind. I don't have, I need, I want, this one has, I want, this one has, I want, this one has, I want. What's a broad mind? A broad mind looks at themselves and says, everything I have is God's kindness. God gives me so much more than I deserve. I'm so grateful for my life. So whatever I have, I feel good about. Do I have everything on everyone's wish list? I don't need everything on everyone's wish list. My needs are met very, very well. And that's a broad-minded person who doesn't feel needy. So I was thinking about this a lot over the week, just, I don't know, on and off. I kept thinking about this concept and kept thinking about tripping over that too long dress. Did it affect anyone else? Did anyone else relate to it or think about it? Did you feel impacted by this idea? That when you look at your life and you feel it's good, it's blessed, you feel grateful, you feel full. And when you look at your life and feel lacking, you feel bad, you feel unhappy. Remember, we gave those tips. Look at people that have less than you. It makes you realize how much you truly have.
Carol, I have a question.
Sure.
Are you talking about like physical needs or like health or spiritual needs, or what are you referring to?
That's a great question. So we said that anything that's a true need is not what we're talking about. Health is a need. Everyone needs to be healthy. That's not a luxury item. Spirituality, a connection to God, is a need. That's not a luxury item either. Having relationships in life and love, those are needs. So most of what this is referring to is more people that are running after materialistic extras. Now, obviously, within the range of material, there's also needs. And obviously, we need our basic needs met, and people need to have roofs over their heads and know that they're not going to lose that roof, and know they're going to be secure, and know they have food, and know they have enough heat in the winter. And obviously, there are basic needs also in the material realm. So we're talking primarily about people that in the material realm want more, which, of course, we might think is a product of the 21st century I culture, and it probably is. But this dates back thousands of years, this prayer and this verse. So that means even though a few thousand years ago what our ancestors were wanting as more was very small compared to our frame of reference, but for them, it was running after the luxuries. But health is not a luxury. Peace in the home, harmony in the home is not a luxury. Relationships between parents and children is not a luxury. Those are not luxury items. Those are needs. Anyone else? Anyone else had any thoughts of this over the week, or questions on this, or ways that they reflected on this in their own life? Okay, we could go on to the second perspective. But again, I really think it's easy to say, and it might seem like, of course, but there is that little worm of unhappiness that creeps in. There is that little worm of like, I deserve more, or everyone else has, that whoever that everyone is out there looking at social media, Facebook, and those types of posts is very feeding that worm, is very much helps that worm grow and grow and grow, that worm of discontent, that worm of feeling, that you have less than so many other people, and you're far more deserving, and yet you have far less. And it doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem right. Your needs are not being met. And what we're saying here is step back. In a sense, broad mind means step back. Like, step back and look at your life. Look at your life. Look at the good in your life. Feel grateful for the good. Feel full. Feel full from the good. And then you're happy. It's weird because that sounds like too simplistic. Like, come on. Like, that's so easy. But it really is a very powerful tool. Look back. Step back. Look at all the blessings. Look at all the reasons why your life is working, is good, and really feel like full from the good in your life, and really feel grateful for the good in your life. And as we said, if this doesn't help you enough, think of people that have less. In many ways, as we said, less does not only mean materially, because obviously there's many significant things in our life, as Fega was pointing out, besides possessions and the material realm. Think of people that have less than you, not like to gloat, God forbid, to feel superior, God forbid, but just to have a perspective on how rich your life is. Remember, I've shared this because it made such a strong impact on me. This was many years ago. I have many children, and at this point in my life, most of them are out of the home, so my house is fairly neat and organized, more or less. But when I had all of them running around the home, it wasn't, especially not on Sundays. And I remember a woman once came into my house on a Sunday when my house looked like a topsy-turvy disaster. She looked around and she said to me, "You are so rich." I knew she meant it. She meant it very sincerely. She'd never married and didn't have children, family, and she looked at me and she felt, "You are so rich." Like, she didn't look and say, "Oh my gosh, it's such a mess." That's what I was thinking. She was like, "You are so rich." And it resonated. And I remembered it. And that was a long time ago. But I remember it because it was so true. And I was like, she's right. I'm so rich. My house is a mess, but I'm so rich. Rich with what counts. So thank God now my house isn't as much a mess, but it gave me a very strong perspective. And I think each one of us, sometimes we have those like moments, those like epiphany style moments. Maybe an outsider says a comment and we could relook at what's going on our own plate and just say, there's a lot of blessings. There's a lot of good. I'm very blessed. I have a very, very blessed life. That was all approach one. There's another deeper way of looking at this concept and really reflecting on yourself and on how you look and prioritize what's going on in life. We're looking at this idea of, this is based verse from prayers, the quotation from our prayers. Many of the needs of your people and their minds are very small. And your minds are small, your needs feel very great. And we were contrasting that with the verse from Proverbs. A good-hearted person is always feasting. A good-hearted person, a person with, as the sages say, a broad mind. A broad-minded person is always happy. A small-minded person has a lot on their needs, has a long list of needs. The second approach is small-minded and broad-minded really is reflecting how we look at physicality, at the physical stuff of our life, how important it is to us. A broad-minded person, meaning like your mind is big and you're thinking of concepts, you're thinking of ideas, you're thinking of spirituality, you're thinking of godliness. So the physical stuff is not that important. In other words, physical is limited. So if you're broad-minded, you're not looking for things that are limited. You're not looking for things that are small. You're into what's limitless, like God, like his service, like the commandments, like Torah, like things that are big and broad and limitless. But physical stuff is limited. So if you're stuck in the world of physical, and physical is what's important, and physical is what's driving you, it makes you by definition very small, because physical itself is very small. Now, obviously, even spirituality has limits, but service of God doesn't have any limits. So if you're broad-minded, if what you care about are the big things, it's not the physical things that you care about. It's God that you care about. And that's actually what Maimonides says in terms of redemption. And he says that the sages, why do they want redemption? They want redemption because then they're going to know God. They want a knowledge of God. They want redemption because they want to serve God completely. And then they'll serve God completely. And you could say, all right, that sounds okay. Why else would someone want redemption? Well, by redemption, there's also going to be like amazing wealth. We'll all have limitless possessions and wealth and all the physicality of this world. It will be there, free flowing, amazing, nice backdrop. Sages are, it's just the back. That's not the motivation. That's not what's driving us, because that's not so important. That's a little irrelevant. But serving God, that's important. We'll have that by redemption. That's, wow. In Europe, there's a story that there was once a Jew who could have become like a rabbi, but he didn't want to become a rabbi. So he became a merchant, and he got, let's call it, too into it. And once he received a letter from the Rebbe, the spiritual leader that he was connected to. And the Rebbe said to him, the verse says, man doesn't live by bread alone. Man lives by the word of God. We are hungry for food. Anybody here has ever been hungry for food? Our soul is hungering for the spark of godliness in that food. In other words, even when we're eating, and that's a physical need, and we definitely are allowed to eat and should, but there's something more than just the physical going on. There's also a spiritual dimension, and that spiritual dimension is part of feeding your hunger. Now you're like, no way, I'm hungry because I didn't eat, or it looks really good, or it smells really good, or I know I like it. I mean, let's get real. That's how we absorb reality. But actually, your soul is hungering for that spark in the food. You're not aware of it? That's okay. But that is literally part of your hunger drive. So in other words, what we're saying here is this applies to everything in life. Of course, we're physical people in a physical world. God made us physical, and God gave us a very physical world. And we have a lot of very physical needs, and we have to take care of our physical needs, and we need sleep, and we need food, and we need many things in the physical world. So we do it. But the message is, don't get stuck in it. Don't think of just doing it for its own sake. And that's it. That's the end. Because then that becomes a type of worshiping. We want to use the physical as a vehicle to connect to God. Otherwise, we sort of lost the point. We lost the purpose. I think I mentioned this recently, maybe, that the sages, this was in the time of the first temple, the greatest sin, the greatest desire of the Jews that ultimately caused the destruction of the temple was a desire for idolatry. And that really, it's hard for us to understand. Like, why are people running after serving something and worshiping something and all these forms of worship? But they really were. And it really led to the destruction of the temple. And in the era between the first and second temple, the sages were like, we can't handle it. We're not handling it. It's taking us over. And they prayed and prayed and prayed to God to take away this temptation for idolatry. Just take it away from your people, because your people can't handle it. They're running after golden images. They're running after stone images. They're running after wood images. They're dancing and cutting their hair and whatever, doing all this crazy stuff, which is such an abomination to you. Just take this away from them. They are not handling it well. And God listened. And he took away the temptation for us to serve idols, bow to images, do all of the various service before these graven images, these carved images, these statues, these pictures, whatever it is. The first leader of Chabad, whose work is a Tanya that we study, he said that it's not so simple. God can't just say, okay, I'll take it away. Meaning everything has a balance in this world. There's an equilibrium. As much as there's a pull in the side of godliness, there's a pull in the side of evil. So that piece of desiring idolatry, that was balanced out by many other godly things in this world. They can't just take it away. It gets the world out of whack. So he said, it's not that God just took it away. What God did was he replaced it. Instead of us serving the idol of graven images, of statues, of pictures, of whatever man decided and called idol, a sun, a moon, a stars, thunder, lightning, the earth, whatever was the idol, we started worshiping something much more base. We started worshiping things. We started worshiping money. We started worshiping the possessions that money buys. And that became the new wave idolatry, starting with the beginning of the Second Temple era. So the Jews were no longer sinning with graven images. They were no longer transgressing, thou shalt not serve idols in the literal sense, but instead they were grappling with, as we would call it, running after the dollar or the shekel or the ruble or whatever it was. And the Alter Rebbe who said this said, I don't know if it's such a good thing, meaning this is also a very hard form of idolatry. So every one of us has this experience on some level. Every one of us has this experience of the pull of materialism, and every one of us, I'm sure, has an understanding. We don't want to fall victim to it. How do you find it in yourself? How do you give yourself a detachment? Do you feel you fall into caring too much, and what do you do to not care enough, or you don't do that? Or what's your perspective on how you keep your broad mind, don't fall under, don't become an idol worshiper of the dollar or the Bitcoin or whatever else? What do you see? How do you process this in your own life? Like, this is a very high level idea. Broad-minded, you don't care about the physical. Small-minded, you care about the physical. But it's also a very relevant idea because we're very human physical people, and we'd like to be broad-minded and happy. And we're being told when you're small-minded and you care about this stuff, you're not so happy. And when you're broad-minded and don't care about it, you are happy. How do you get yourself to detach, unless you're saying it's not a challenge for you, or if it is a challenge, how have you grown to be detached from things?
I always felt like I never felt like comparing myself with anybody else, with the achievements or material status or whatever. So I was like competing, like, so I think comparison is a horrible thing because that's creates envy, that creates discontent and all those negative things, and if you don't compare, you'll be happy. You know what I mean?
That's a very good point. That's a very practical point.
Yes.
That's a very, very practical point. You're saying just avoiding the natural comparisons.
Right.
Natural comparisons lead us to feel not content and not satisfied.
Mm-hmm. Right. And jealous people are always compare themselves to. That's that's how they operate.
Absolutely.
Extremely important. Extremely important.
Anyone else?
You shift your priorities also with, you understand that, how much you need. And another thing is, I know some people that when I'm around them, it's kind of toxic. I'm avoiding those.
So you're saying, Leah, that certain toxic people more pull you into that negative headspace, and when
Yeah,
you're careful,
that's exactly that. You see yourself. It's not like I feel envy or jealousy, but it's kind of like impact me in a negative way. That I feel like when I'm not around those people, I feel more free of these materialistic things. But unfortunately, our life, I don't want to sound hypocritical, but unfortunately, our life is too materialistic at the same time that you need money to survive, you know?
100%. And that's what I was saying. It's not like, well, if you want to do it right, you just don't eat. It's simpler to fast for God than to eat for God. But God wants us to eat for God, not to fast for God, because we got to eat. So if God gave us a choice, well, you can have a purely spiritual reality. No, that's not a choice. That's not even what God wants. There's a debate among the sages. When I mean sages, I mean like the great, great, great sages. What will be the ultimate point of the redemption, meaning there's stages in the redemption. When we come to the ultimate climax of the redemption, will we be, this was the discussion, souls and bodies, meaning a physical world, or will we be disembodied souls, a purely spiritual reality? And some sages, led by Maimonides, said, we're going to be disembodied souls. I mean, what's greater than just pure spirituality? That's the pinnacle, the climax, the ultimate of all of our existence is to detach from all the physical and be just spiritual, intellectual beings. And Nachmanides and most of the Kabbalists and the Hasidic movement said, no way, no way, nope. This is one point where we disagree with Maimonides. The ultimate point of redemption, we're going to be souls and bodies. You know why? Because that's the ultimate. The ultimate is to be physical beings in a physical world and serve God with a physical. So it's not like, well, if we really, really were, we would just like live in caves on bread and water and that would be ideal. No, that wouldn't be ideal. That's not what God wants at all. He wants us to live physical lives. He wants us to have good physical lives. And at the same time, he doesn't want us to worship the physical. He wants us to have the physical, but not worship it. Have the physical, but don't care about it. That's the delicate balance. So what Ina said before is when you don't compare, you avoid that jealous discontent trap, and she's right. And what Leah is saying is when you avoid certain types of people, it helps a lot. And she's 100% right. But what she's also saying, and I really want to explain this concept because it's a very delicate concept, is our goal to not have physical? No, that's not all our goal. God created a beautiful world and he wants you to have beautiful things. He wants you to have beautiful things. That's part of his beautiful world is for you, his only child, to have beautiful things and to have a wonderful life in the physical as well as in the spiritual. But he doesn't want you to worship it. He doesn't want you to care about it. He wants you to have it and care about serving him. So that's really what I'm asking is, how do we avoid falling into the trap of caring too much and therefore needing, wanting, must have, while at the same time having a balanced life and hopefully having a beautiful physical life? Because we're his children. God wants us to have a good life on every level. It's a very, very delicate balance of using the physical and not serving the physical. Being the master over the physical, not worshiping the physical, not needing it too much, having it without needing it. Anyone else? Any other tips for this? Any other ideas? Because, listen, we're all physical people in a physical world, so we all at some point or another have to deal with this question.
In other
Also
words,
appreciate what you have, Just appreciate it. Remind yourself that what you have, this is what you need.
And so that's actually something I've been telling myself a lot lately also, that God takes such good care of me, so that means whatever I have is exactly what I need, because he's taking good care of me. So if I don't have it, by definition, that means I don't need it. Or by definition, that means I'm getting it, because he's taking good care of me. He's taking good care of me. He's taking good care of me. Appreciate what I have. What I have is what I need. I don't have it, I don't need it, or it's coming, because he takes good care of us. Anyone else? Any other ways you stay above and not fall below in this concept?
It's very important to have healthy relationship with money. That's also very important. Like what you just said,
Sure, a healthy relationship.
appreciate it,
The tool.
but not worship it, right?
Exactly. That's in essence what we're saying. Okay, so what we're saying is if you have a small mind, the physical is very important, and that's why you have a lot of needs. Like the verse says, the needs of your people are very great and their minds are very small. When you have a small mind and the physical is very important, you will never escape the trap of needing. And honestly, it doesn't make a difference how much you have. It doesn't make a difference how much you have. If you have a small mind, if the physical is important, if, as Ina's saying, you don't have a healthy relationship with it, and it's just really, really important to you, however much you have, you don't have. You don't have enough. You need more. It's just not good enough. And that's a small mind. And that's where physical takes over. And that means you're not very happy with your life. You feel discontent, even though everyone else can see, oh my gosh, you have such a beautiful this and you have such a beautiful that. If it's a beautiful home or a beautiful clothing or a beautiful this or a beautiful this, but like you're not content because your mind is small, because physical takes up a lot of space. And that's why you don't feel your needs are being met. And when we have that broad mind, when we're not so into it, when we're not worshiping it, we don't have so many needs. We're satisfied. We're happy. We have a good life. We have what we need. If we need more and it's a real need, God will give it. It's a wonderful perspective to really be in that space of thinking, God's taking care of me. God's taking care of me. If I need it, if it's a real need, He's going to give it to me. If He doesn't give it to me, it's not something I need. Because my needs He takes care of. And that really goes back to what we were saying before about all your needs are really met. Then when you want more and more and more, like the too long dress, you fall on your face. God takes care of us. So if I don't have it and I need it and it's a real need, I'll get it. And I really have to have that perspective. I really have to really absorb that mindset of all my needs are taken care of. And if it's not taken care of yet and it's a real need, it's coming. So it's interesting because this phrase that we're talking about, the needs of your people are very great and their minds are very small, is a phrase from a prayer. This is a prayer we're asking God. The needs of your people are very great and their minds are very small. What is the prayer? What are we asking God? What we're saying is, even though the reason why your people's needs are so great is because their minds are so small, God, give it to them. It's inappropriate. It's not what they need. It's more. It's undeserved. It's because they're prioritizing the physical. It's because they don't properly appreciate everything they're getting, meaning they're doing everything wrong that we've been speaking about for this and last week. We're doing everything wrong. But if we're doing everything wrong, you know what, God? This is our prayer. Give it anyway. It's not how we should behave, but we're behaving this way. Give it anyway. Now, it's nice, of course, to ask God for everything, but how do we have the chutzpah to say this? What do we mean? Yeah, people are small-minded. They're over-prioritizing the physical. They're not properly appreciating what you're giving to them. They're not properly assessing themselves. They don't realize that you're giving them far more than they deserve. But God, you know what? Give it anyway. So how can we say this? So what we're really saying here is, you know what? Your people are your people. And in general, they get it. They have a broad mind. They look at themselves. They appreciate how much you give them. They're not overly into the physical. They're not overly worshiping it. It's there. It's a tool. It's not worship. But sometimes we lose it. Sometimes we get caught in the trap. Maybe like Leah said, we hang out with the wrong people. Maybe like Ina said, we fall into the comparison jealousy mode. Whatever, we're human. And as humans, sometimes, even though normally we're very healthy and have a very healthy relationship with money and possessions, But sometimes we fall in the trap and the physical becomes important to us and too important. And sometimes we fall in the trap when we don't properly evaluate ourselves and we feel we deserve more or should get more or everyone else has. We mess up. So what, in essence, we're saying to God in this prayer, and I think it's a very powerful point that we're making here. God, sometimes we mess up. Let's face it. Sometimes we over-prioritize the wrong thing. It's true. But you know what? In general, we're healthy. In general, we get it. In general, we're serving you properly. So when we trip, when we fall on our face, when we mess up, give it to us anyway, and he will. Meaning, if in general a person is broad-minded, you know who you are, you know what you should be getting, you appreciate what God gives you, you feel full, you feel blessed, you feel grateful, all the things we were saying. The physical is not so important to you anyway. You've got many more things that are important to you than things. And sometimes you slip. Sometimes you crash. Sometimes you mess up. But God, because of all the times we don't, because of all the times we're balanced and healthy and normal and serving you properly, when we do mess up and we are over prioritizing and we are too into it, give it to us anyway. And I thought this was a very, very, very beautiful point. I thought this was a very reassuring point and a very beautiful point, because extrapolating this concept, just in general, thinking about the point this prayer is saying we're human. Many of the needs of your people in their minds are small. We're human. We shouldn't have a small mind, but sometimes we do. We shouldn't over-prioritize the physical, and sometimes we do. We shouldn't give you such a long list that we need, we must have, we want, and sometimes we do. We're human, and as humans, sometimes we slip up. But God, even during our messes, remember the times when we're serving you properly. Remember the times when we're focused. Remember the times when we're focusing on you, when we're working on our relationship with you, when that's what's important to us. And use that merit to help us even when we don't deserve it. And I think that's something we can think about in general. And I thought it was a very beautiful and very reassuring point that sometimes we are not where we should be in any dimension. You know, it doesn't have to be in this area. It could be in many other areas. Sometimes we're not. And many times we are. And it's very reassuring that God says, you know, I made you. I happen to know that you're human because I made you. And I happen to know that humans are human. And I so appreciate all the times you serve me. I so appreciate all the times you do it right. So even those times that you're doing it wrong, it's okay. I'll still totally be there for you because I so appreciate all the times you do it right. And that was like a really beautiful thought because, yeah, it's true, you know. But God so appreciates our service, whatever our service is. If our service is lighting the candles for Shabbat, if our service is attending this class, if our service is saying Psalms day and night, whatever our service is, giving charity, dressing modestly, choosing to eat something because it's kosher, or choosing to not eat something because it's not kosher. Whatever we do, God appreciates and prioritizes. Doesn't mean he doesn't know the other stuff, but he so appreciates when we do it right. And even when we're not doing it right, that merit carries over and helps us. Has anyone seen this in their life? That even if they weren't exactly doing it right, but God helped and they really felt it was maybe for the times that they did do it right? Or seeing with yourself this flux of doing it right, being focused and then losing the focus, being focused and then losing the focus. But each time that being focused really overwhelms and colors the whole picture. Anyone's experienced something like that in their own life?
It's not the answer to your question, but the concept that helps me, it's very famous concept that the money I make and my husband makes, it doesn't belong to us. It's a loan from God. Like almost we don't deserve it. It's extra. That's how I feel. And it's up to us how we distribute this money. Either we buy like more expensive clothes, car, upgrade the house, or we do charity and spend money on kosher food, on good deeds. So that was it helps.
The answer to what I was asking before, and it's a good answer, Manu. I like that answer. It is a good answer because it's a very healthy perspective on money to escape what the Alter Rebbe said, that money is the current idol of the world. And I asked how we escape that perspective, and Menucha's saying, if you look at money and say, I'm God's banker, this isn't my money, I'm the banker. And how am I going to distribute the resources that God entrusted in me? It is a very good way to have a healthy perspective.
Yes, it helps not to get attached to physical, to money, and easily like to donate this money or help with like grandchildren with Jewish education. So all of this.
That's a beautiful thing to do with money. And that's a beautiful tool. And that's why we say, like I was saying before, it's not like we're saying, oh, we don't want physical. God wants us to have beautiful physical lives. We just don't want to be worshiping it. We want to put it in perspective and be worshiping God and use money as a tool to serve him. So taking money and using it to give your grandchildren a Jewish education is a wonderful example of using it as a great tool to connect to God. Not worshiping money, worshiping God. That's a wonderful, wonderful example of how you do it. But this idea, going back to what we're saying here, this idea of like, God knows we're human, but even when we are human and mess up, God remembers all the times we serve him. And he allows that to flavor also when we're not, also when we're not doing exactly as we should. Has anyone had that experience or felt that? This sense of like, I'm not really doing right, but God really appreciates the times I am right. And he's given me a lot of credit also in these other situations. It's hard to notice in yourself, but it's a very strong thought that God so appreciates our good. He so appreciates when we serve him that even when we're messing up, he's like, you're messing up, but generally you give me so much nachas. You're doing so good. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy with what you're doing. You're giving me such joy. Okay, yes. You're over prioritizing the physical and under appreciating everything I'm giving for you, but all right, I'll give it to you anyway.
For me, it's always the mixture. I always feel like I can do so much. I should do so much more. There are a lot of things that I still don't do. So it's always a mixture, do good and not enough. But yeah, I feel God is so merciful in my life. Thanks God.
So you're saying the mixture is staying focused on God versus everything else that distracts you?
Mixture of doing right and not enough right things. I don't know how many days I have when I am happy with myself in this respect, because I know there is much more that I could do that I don't do yet. But I'm not able to do. It's a little, I don't know if it's the right thing to approach all that, because sometimes it makes me stressful, because I always feel that I should do more, but I'm not enough disciplined or something that I don't have a feeling that I do enough.
So I'd say the question is, if it's coming from a good place, it's pushing you to do more good. If it's coming from a bad place, it's making you unhappy. That's the question, because it could be, it could be like, I'll call it a very religious evil inclination. That, your inclination isn't going and saying, oh, do this thing wrong, oh, this thing wrong. Your inclination is so religious, it's saying, oh, you're not good enough yet, and therefore you can feel all depressed and bad about yourself. So in the end, inclination gets what it wants. It makes you feel bad about yourself. On the other hand, it could be a great push from your soul to do more and to do more and to do more. And I think the balance is to like is to always remember that God is looking at our movement, not what rung we are on the ladder. God's not saying, why are you not on rung 579? Why are you only on rung 482? That's not what God's asking. What God's asking is, are you better today than you were yesterday? Wherever you're holding, that's what God's asking. Are you growing? Everything is about movement. Everything is that today should be a little better than yesterday, and tomorrow should be a bit better than today. And if every day it's a little better, imagine how you are in a month, and imagine how you are in 3 months, and imagine how you are in a year, and imagine how you are in a decade. So when we look at ourselves and we can say, I lived today, I gave today, I grew today, I served today, that's wonderful. And that should make us feel good. At the same time, we should know, and tomorrow should be better. So if the thought is a thought that makes us feel bad about ourselves, I would be suspicious where it's coming from.
Oh, really?
If the thought is a thought that's making us do more and work harder, then it's coming from a good place. And of course, we're never done. Wherever we're holding, there's always more, and there's always more, and there's always deeper, and there's always better, and there's always more sincere, and there's always with more emotion and with more passion. There's always more, and that's good. We're never going to stagnate. We're never done. But it shouldn't be with a sense of like, I feel bad about what I'm doing. It should be with a sense of like, did I grow today? Is today better than yesterday? In the areas I struggle with. In my areas of struggle, if I forget to make blessings, did I make more blessings today than yesterday? If I forget to be nice to my husband, was I nicer today than yesterday? If I forget to reach out for people that are maybe lonely, did I reach out more today than yesterday? In whatever areas I struggle, am I getting higher on my ladder? That's good. Have I arrived? I'll never arrive because God's infinite and I'm finite. But I can get closer and closer and closer. I grow and grow and grow and grow, and that's the beauty, is like to know I achieved, I grew. So that would be like the question. If it's a tool that makes you feel bad about yourself, then I'm suspicious about it. If it's a tool that makes you grow, it's wonderful. But just always remember, God's not saying what number you're holding on the ladder. The point is only, am I growing? Am I growing? Good. I'm not perfect yet? Okay. We got a while. I always say, God, give us for eternity and we'll get to perfect. But until you give us eternity, we're not getting to perfect. But we can get better and better and better and better.
Sometimes I feel like I'm growing in something, but not enough. Another thing. There is always something that not growing yet.
Because some things are harder for us, and sometimes we could be amazing in areas that are easy for us and not focusing on the areas that are hard for us, which could be very, very important. That's why they're hard. So it's good to demand growth. But what I'm saying is, as long as there's growth, you can feel contentment. You shouldn't feel like, yeah, I grew, but so far from where I should be. I grew? Thank God. Good. Wonderful. I grew.
That's good. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Just I grew. All right. I know God's happy because that's what He looks at. Did I grow? Am I getting closer? Am I getting closer? So just to tie this back into the verse, just to pull together what I was saying before, right? A good-hearted person is always rejoicing, is always feasting, is always happy. When you're good-hearted, which we said meant broad-minded, generally you look at yourself properly, you evaluate yourself properly, you realize God's giving you a lot more than you deserve, you appreciate it, you're broad-minded, you're into the big things in life, serving God, spirituality, Torah, mitzvahs, the commandments, you're a broad-minded person, then you always will be rejoicing, meaning even when you slip up, like we're human and sometimes do, and therefore you have needs that you really shouldn't have, but we're human and sometimes have needs we shouldn't have, God will give it to us. So we're always happy. We're happy when we're in the healthy state of mind because we look at everything correctly. And when we sometimes fall into an unhealthy state of mind, we're happy too because God takes care of our needs, because He's so grateful for all the times we are serving Him properly. And I think that's a wonderful thing to remember, is that God so appreciates our service. I can't imagine, and you can't imagine how much God appreciates our service. If we could, we'd obviously be doing a lot more. So we can't, but we can understand that we can't imagine how much he appreciates the service because he appreciates it that much. And sometimes just thinking about that helps us grow more on the ladder and do a little more. Thank you.